So this reader's rep for the New York Times, Dr. Hawkins, basically said, look, we had a paragraph about the subpoenas. He said the following papers had nothing in their print editions about the subpoenas: the Washington Post, USA Today, the Wall Street Journal, the New York Daily News, and the Boston Globe. And the Los Angeles Times had 3 sentences on the subpoena of the Attorney General over Fast and Furious. I mean, that is astounding to me.
Yeah, and what the New York Times should have realized is what that did is gave them the opportunity to be the ones to break the news. But
Absolutely.
Instead, they also played along and carried water for Obama and company. I mean, I come back to the one thing you and I talk about every time I'm on with you. Agent Brian Terry is dead. God bless his family. And for him alone, there's reason that these news agencies should be speaking up.
Well, yes, and I mean, again, you make a really good point that in the world of journalism, you jump on these stories. You don't find excuses as to why you're not covering them. And again, this reader's rep says, I think our coverage was timely and the space we devoted to it was appropriate to the development. Once you say the subpoenas were issued, action that had already been threatened, there wasn't a lot to say, which is just absurd, again, given that, Daily Caller reported on this, townhall.com reported on this, we reported on this. You can talk about what information, simply discussing what information has been demanded of the Attorney General would give you enough for a 6 or 7 paragraph story, as opposed to the little blurb on page A23, I think it was, that the New York Times had.
Oh, that's right. Well, and if you go back to my piece that you're citing from today on Pajamas Media, where I talk about how Fast and Furious demonstrates the divide between the ruling class and the rest of us, this is a perfect example. Because to the ruling class, this is not a story to cover because it may diminish their power. And particularly it may diminish one of them who is in power, and that's Eric Holder, and they don't want anything to happen to him. So they will ignore this at the risk or at the peril of the rest of us, which is absolutely ridiculous.
Yeah, and you point out President Obama said on October the 6th, quote, "With respect to Fast and Furious, I think I've been very clear that I have complete confidence in Attorney General Holder and how he handles his office. He's indicated he was not aware of what was happening in Fast and Furious. Certainly I was not. And I think both he and I would have been very unhappy if someone had suggested that guns were allowed to pass through that could have been prevented by the United States of America." Now, look, that's great, Dr. Hawkins, that the president has complete confidence in the Attorney General. He may be the only person in America who can make that statement with a straight face, but he did. The problem is nobody else has confidence in the Attorney General. Everybody else heard the Attorney General say in May of this year that he learned about Fast and Furious just a few weeks earlier, and now we've got President Obama on tape back in early March saying that he had learned about Fast and Furious a few weeks before that. So are we really to believe that there was, President Obama, when he learned about this, didn't call up the Attorney General and say, "Hey, Eric, what's going on here?"
Yeah, well, are we really to believe that it would have originated with President Obama instead of the Attorney General? That's how I think about it. And I believe that if the president knew in March, the Attorney General knew before then, because I think this would have come from the Department of Justice and the ATF or the DEA working together and been brought to the president. That's what I think.
Really?
Yes.
Well, and it's interesting. I mean, the information contained in these subpoenas, or the requests contained in these subpoenas, again, to the New York Times, it felt like writing a story on this. They could have learned some interesting things. I mean, not only is Representative Issa asking for emails and documents from 14 senior Justice Department officials, and I mean Deputy Attorney General, right underneath the Attorney General. He's also asking for communication between the White House staffer Eric Schultz and anybody at DOJ regarding Fast and Furious. He wants to know about a meeting that may have been held in Mexico City between then U.S. Ambassador Carlos Pascual and Lanny Brewer, who is the head of the criminal division at DOJ. And I understand as well that Representative Issa is also looking into he's made a request for some DOD documents, which is an interesting twist.
Well, but, I think you and I have spoken about that before, but, Big Sis probably knows a little something about this. And so going to the Department of Defense, going to the Department of Homeland Security, I think that's an end around game to try to smoke her out a little bit.
Really? That very well could be.
The reason I say it, Cam, if you think of all the attorneys that Holder used in Arizona, I mean, you back up 5 years, she was the governor in Arizona. She knows these people. She knows them well. They're friends of hers. She's friends of theirs. And so I just think we're going to find out a lot about a lot of people if ISA keeps up the good work.
And I think that he is going to keep up this work. I know that there are calls for a special prosecutor. Representative Issa says he wants to hold additional hearings. He wants to get as much information out there as possible so that if a independent prosecutor starts to veer off in another direction, at least we can call him out on it. In your piece today, Dr. Hawkins, you also quote Sheriff Paul Babeu of Pinal County, a guy who's been on this program on a number of occasions. You say he's not a member of the ruling class, and he says, quote, "It is insanity that they could try to rationalize this and still withhold and try to cover up information that implicates them." He and 9 other sheriffs in Arizona are calling for that special prosecutor, this independent investigation into Fast and Furious. And again, this is a bipartisan group of sheriffs who are fed up with the lines that they have been peddled to them by the Obama administration.
You're right, Cam, and I'll tell you what else. The thing about that sheriff that I love so much, he speaks the truth. He is the man who came out and said that Eric Holder was an accomplice to the murders that have taken place with Fast and Furious weapons. This is a man who speaks the truth, and he's the kind of man the ruling class really hates, because not only does he work for a living, but he's not ashamed of the truth, and he knows that his freedom is valuable. He speaks about it. A remarkable man.
Yeah, he really is. Every time we talk to him, you can just hear the frustration in his voice. As a matter of fact, they had a big bust down there, I think just last night, a big drug bust. But, he's so frustrated with the lack of effort on the part of the Obama administration to make the border areas safer. Pinal County is not a border county. I mean, it does not butt up right against Mexico. It's a good ways north. It's just to the south of Phoenix, Arizona. Sheriff Babeu talks about the cartel members that have claimed the high ground in his county. The scouts that spy, in essence, on his deputies, and they occupy the literal high ground in Pinal County. They're up there on the mountaintops watching the movement of law enforcement and letting these drug traffickers, these human traffickers, know where they need to go to avoid being caught.
And if you want to make a worst-case scenario worse, those men who hold the high ground may hold the high ground with 50 caliber snipers that they got through Fast and Furious.
I'm
just saying, and as I've thought about the sheriff's men, I've thought about that a number of times, how ironic it would be if those cartel members who hold that high ground are doing so with weapons they got through Fast and Furious. They're looking now through scopes they got through Eric Holder's Fast and Furious, so on and so forth. The sheriff has plenty to be mad about.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, what do you think, Dr. Hawkins, about these stories? We've now seen 2 of them from the Associated Press talking about the. We lost him again. All right, we'll try to get him back one more time. I don't know what's going on with the phone gremlins this evening. I'm not going to blame the administration, however. I'm just going to. No, I don't have my tinfoil-lined hat tonight. I'm just going to assume atmospheric issues, perhaps, not big sis. Cutting off. Yes, hey, there you are, Dr. Hawkins. How you doing?
Let me let you in on a little secret.
Yeah.
I'm down on the border tonight.
Are you?
And what is happening is the towers in Mexico, or however it's set up right here in the area, the guys I'm with, they say that it causes them to drop calls all the time. And I don't understand the setup, but I'm about probably 100 yards from the Rio Grande right now. So
no kidding.
I apologize for that. That's why you've lost me twice.
Oh, listen, that's all right. Listen, you stay safe down there, all right?
Oh, I'll stay safe. I've got a buddy, Smith & Wesson. those two guys. I travel with them everywhere.
Fantastic. I'm glad to know you use the buddy system there, Dr. Hawkins. So listen, all right. So let me ask you, because now we've seen two stories from the Associated Press alleging that operations similar to Fast and Furious took place under the Bush administration. Now the problem is, the more you learn about these operations that they're talking about, they don't really look anything at all like Operation Fast and Furious. But it looks to me anyway like the Obama administration is putting this information out there in a pretty desperate attempt to try to deflect some of the blame and make it seem like this is an issue that stretches across more than one administration.
Oh, I agree. I mean, I've got two daughters, and when one of the daughters will do something and I get on her, she'll tell me the other daughter told her to do it. Like I'm supposed to drop pursuit at that point and forget what she's done.
Right.
And they're doing the same thing. You know, Bush had a small operation. I think at the most there were a few hundred guns. Less than 500 guns is the highest number I've seen over a long period of time that may have been involved in some kind of straw purchase or some kind of operation that I can't really speak on with authority.
Mm-hmm.
But it's nothing compared to what we're dealing with here. This is a smokescreen. It's just a way to try to get you, me, everybody else, whether it's at Breitbart or Town Hall or wherever, they're just trying to get us to chase a rabbit somewhere so that they can have time to kind of rearrange their tactics.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, listen, Dr. Hawkins, glad you could join us tonight, sir. Appreciate you checking in from the border, and I look forward to doing this again very soon.
Well, thank you, Cam. I always enjoy being with you.
Me too, sir. Dr. A.W.R. Hawkins joining us from Pajamas Media tonight here on Cam and Company.